Hello, everyone. We will be starting in a moment. People are still joining us. Yeah, just a quick reminder before we start, the webinar is being recorded and we're going to make it available on our website and on YouTube. Right, okay, so it's 1:05 and I think we can start. So hello and welcome to our first webinar of the season. My name is Angelina and I'm a Senior Programme Manager at the US-UK Fulbright Commission. And today I'm going to talk about the Fulbright Awards program, what scholarships we offer, the financial packages, and some other things you need to be thinking about when working on your Fulbright application. Now, before we start, I just want to make it very clear that tonight we're talking specifically about postgraduate applications and postgraduate awards. So this is for those of you who want to go to the US to do some sort of postgraduate academic work. And also we're talking about the academic year of 24-25. So if you're interested in going to the US this year, so 23-24, unfortunately, we ran our competition last year. The format of the event is very straightforward. So I have prepared a short presentation for you, which is about 15 minutes. And after the presentation, I will be very happy to take your questions. I do ask you to wait until the end of the presentation to start submitting your questions, just because it's easier for myself and my colleague to manage that. And also when submitting your questions, please make sure that you use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, not the chat box, but the Q&A. And you can also submit questions anonymously if you wish to do so. All right, so let's start then. Right. Okay, so here we go. So for those of you who have never heard of the Fulbright Awards program before, we are a global scholarships program between the US and the rest of the world, and the program facilitates education and cultural exchange between the US and many other countries. So the program itself was established 75 years ago by US Senator Fulbright. And today, as I said, we will be talking specifically about the awards available to UK citizens and residents. So we offer scholarships to both postgraduate grantees and scholars, and those scholarships can go towards studying, teaching, or researching. We do have a different number of awards pretty much every year, but I would say that the average number of postgraduate grantees is somewhere between 20 and 25 scholarships. Now, what makes our awards, I would say, quite special is the fact that regardless of your academic discipline, regardless of the US institution you want to go to, and regardless of the postgraduate studies type you would like to conduct in the US, there will be something suitable for you, as long as your proposed academic work is full-time and in person. And also, we're now offering a new service. So this is going to be the second year of us doing so. And this service provides additional support to our grantees to identify a selection of the most suitable academic programs in the US, depending on your academic aspirations, obviously, but also your financial circumstances. Now, when I talk about postgraduate Fulbright Awards, I normally talk about two categories. So it's the All Disciplines Award on the one hand and Partner Awards on the other. So the All Disciplines Award is the most competitive scholarship, and we normally offer, I would say, about 10 grants every year. Now, the reason why it is the most competitive scholarship we offer is because it is applicable. It can be taken up in any academic discipline towards any type of postgraduate study anywhere in the US. Now, an important element here is that regardless of how long you will be going to the US for, the award is a maximum of $45,000. So whether you're going to go to the US to do a master's program, which is the most popular option, or whether you're going for the whole 5-6 years to do a PhD, or whether you're going as a researcher let's say a UK-based PhD student going to the US to do a research placement, it's still up to $45,000. Now, partner awards are offered in partnership with either US-based universities or UK-based organizations, and we strongly encourage you to consider partner awards first before you decide to apply for the All Disciplines Award, simply because partner awards are less competitive, and in most cases, they offer a more generous financial package. Now, the reason why they're less competitive is because they're more specific than the All Disciplines Award. So some of our partner awards have to be taken up at specific US institutions. Other awards can be taken up at any US institution, but they're specific to a particular academic field. And I recommend that you have a look at the full list on our website. Right, so I've already mentioned today that we now offer the service of sort of additional support to identify the most suitable programs, and this is what we call the IE placements route. Now, those of you who are familiar with the Fulbright program, or have been familiar with it for some time, may be aware that in the past, the only way to secure a Fulbright award was to apply to the Fulbright Commission and to apply separately to your chosen institutions in the US. And we did not really provide any assistance with the latter. Now, that option is still available for you, and we now call it the independent placements model. The IE placements model removes the requirement of, or the expectation of you being familiar with the US education system. So successful grantees are paired with placement advisors who are based in the US, and those placement advisors recommend a selection of academic programs depending on your academic interests, on what you would like to achieve in the US during the time there, but also your financial circumstances. And this service also includes application fees and any admission test fees you are expected to sit. Your placement advisor also helps you with negotiating additional funding from your host institutions in the US, and you're also eligible to apply for the Opportunity Fund, which is an additional pot of money available from the US-UK Fulbright Commission to selected grantees. Now, the catch here, there's always a catch, is the fact that ultimately it's your placement advisor who will be confirming your final selection of programs. Having said that, I always encourage my grantees to share their preferences if they have any with their placement advisor. Now, the independent placement model, sort of the benefit of this placement model, is the fact that you can apply to as many programs and institutions as you want to. If you have a place somewhere already and you would like to defer it and apply to Fulbright, you are very welcome to do so. And we also recommend this model to those of you who are considering Ivy League institutions. However, something to keep in mind here is that your university choices will be scrutinized. So you will be assessed on them. You will be expected to submit a very strong justification for why you're going where you would like to go. And I would say this is one of the key reasons why strong applications do not get progressed to the interview level. Right, so finally, a few pieces of advice, a few things for you to be thinking about as you start working on your Fulbright application. So the first thing is the deadline is on Tuesday, 2nd of May, 5 p.m. UK time. There are no extensions. My advice is normally to submit your application the day before. If you can't do so, submit it at least at 4 p.m. Do not wait until 2 minutes to 5. That's just my advice. Again, as I've just said, it's really important that you think about what placement model you would like to go for. And those of you who will choose the independent placement model will be expected to do quite a lot of homework in terms of identifying suitable institutions. I also recommend that you have a chat with our Fulbright ambassadors, so you can contact them via our website, and those are our current grantees who are in the US at the moment, or our recently returned alums. Some UK universities have a Fulbright champion on campus, and this is a member of staff who is familiar with the Fulbright program, and they can provide some assistance with your application. So if you're interested to find out if your institution has a Fulbright champion and how to contact them, please let us know. Also, please make sure to read our country-specific instructions. You're fairly unlikely to submit a competitive application otherwise, and the submission portal where you will be submitting your application does not contain all the information you need to know to submit a strong application. The application form itself is quite long, so please start filling it out now. This will give you an idea of what is expected, what sort of paperwork you need to submit, and one of the key elements of your application will be your references. So again, you may want to start thinking now about who to approach to be your referees and when to do so. I will be running more webinars, and I tend to run different things. So today we're kind of getting to know the Fulbright program. Next time, I think I will be talking about the IE placement model versus the independent placements model, and then we will probably run another event. So do keep an eye on those. If you would like to get some free and impartial advice on higher education in the US more generally, so not Fulbright Awards, I do recommend that you make a video appointment with our Education USA team. And finally, I just want to say a few words about this whole concept of Fulbright Fit, which does come up at the application level, interview level. Our alumni sometimes use it, our grantees sometimes use it. But what I do want to emphasize is the fact that at the Fulbright Commission, we do not really use it. I very much discourage you from thinking too much about what you think we may want to hear and read in your application. Think about why Fulbright is right for you. Tell us your story, and this will make your application unique. And on this note, so that's it from me. As I've promised, this is a short presentation. I know that some of you will have questions. So I'm going to be taking questions now. So just to remind everyone, please do use the Q&A box, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. My colleague Harvey is here, I think. He will be joining us, yes, in a second. Hello, Harvey.
Hello, my name is Harvey Hines, and I'm an awards assistant at the Fulbright Commission.
Oh, thank you very much for helping me. So Harvey is going to keep an eye on your questions and will help me answer them. So Harvey, have we got any questions actually?
We do indeed. I will begin.
Mm-hmm.
So to start off, what exactly is the difference between the All Disciplines Award and the Independent Placement Model? They both allow you to apply for whatever course and institution you would like to?
Right, okay, so this is a bit of like apples and oranges question, and we're going to answer it. So the All Disciplines Award is an actual award type. So we have the All Disciplines Award. Those of you who have had a look at our website, we have, let's say, Indiana Law Award, we have BAFTA Scholarship, we have Elsevier Award, so we have different awards, and the All Disciplines is one of them. The reason why it's called All Disciplines is because it can be applied to any academic discipline in the US. The independent or the IE placements model is a route to secure an award. Now, you can apply for the All Disciplines Award either on the independent placement model or the IE placement model. If you are very fixed on sort of where you want to go in the US, you're not willing to negotiate, and funding is probably not your kind of biggest concern. In this case, I would say go for the independent placements model, because this is where you decide yourself which university to apply to, how many programs to apply to. So you're in control of that process and you deal with that independently. So we're not involved in that, except for the fact that you will be expected in your application to tell us what programs you're applying for and why, and you will be assessed on that. That's basically what the All Disciplines Award is and what the independent placement model is.
Perfect. Could you confirm what the advisees get to choose?
I assume that's the, is this with regard to the IE placement? Well, that's probably the question for whoever has submitted the question. If I'm correct, I'll just carry on talking, and then please feel free to submit comments in the Q&A box. Basically, the way it works is, so if you do not have any preferences in terms of US institutions, your placement advisor will get back to you with a selection of programs. You will have a look at the overview, you will be able to ask any questions you have, and then you will tell them which ones you like. It's normally 4 options. And this is where your advisor will submit your applications. Now, if you do have preferences, let's say you may be quite interested in the University of Texas or your whatever institution, your placement advisor will want to know why. And this is your opportunity to kind of communicate your preferences and explain your motivations. Now, there is no guarantee that your placement advisor will include that institution in the your university submission plan. But again, from my experience, so we've run this program for 1 year only, so just so that you know, every single grantee I have who came to the first meeting with a number of preferences had at least one preference included in their final submission plan. Now, when your applications are in, you obviously wait for the responses. Now, let's assume that all of them come back, all of them are positive, you've gotten into all the 4 institutions. You then choose which institution you go to. So it's not up to us, it's not up to your placement advisor, it's up to you.
Perfect. For our next question, is the All Awards $45,000 per year or in total?
Well, it's 9, to be honest. So the 45K mainly applies to the All Disciplines Award, and this is in total. At the moment, we have, I think, one more award, which is 45,000, and that's Alistair Cook. Again, that is in total. All the other awards offer either a different amount or a different financial package, and the award page will specify exactly what that includes. If it's a specific amount, let's say 60K, 160K, whatever that is, it's going to be like a one-off payment in a sense that it's not renewed every year. That's the whole award amount.
Will I receive an automatic invite to your next webinars?
I think you need to sign, so there is a mailing list somewhere on our website, and normally those who are signed up get an invitation. If you're struggling to find that kind of the option to sign up to that list, just drop us an email at programs@fulbright.org.uk and I will check whether we can sign people up. If not, we do advertise all our events on our events page, and we will also be posting things on social media. So if you want to make sure that you do not miss out on future events, you can just sign up to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, whatever you use. We don't do TikTok at the moment, I'm afraid.
How many applicants do you get on average from UK students per application cycle?
I get this question pretty much every time, and unfortunately we can't really answer because it does differ. Our numbers have changed since we've moved the timeline, and it also very much differs. It very much depends on the award. So we can be talking about, I don't know, 15, 20 applications per one partner award. We will be talking about, hundreds of applications for the All Disciplines Award. But then again, the All Disciplines Award, as I said, is it's multiple grants. So it can be 10, 12 awards per cycle.
I am a British national who is resident in Mexico. Am I eligible to apply for PhD programs?
So all UK citizens are eligible regardless of where they reside, as long as they do not hold an American passport and as long as they do not reside in the US. Now, in this case, especially if you've built your life in Mexico, we will probably be looking for some evidence of whether you're going to come back to the UK after your studies, how you're going to use your knowledge after you complete your academic work in the US. So we will be looking for some evidence of how this may affect the UK or maybe your local community in the UK.
With the IIE placement, will the advisors help us navigate the US application system? And is the Fulbright application completely separate from the application to university?
Thank you. So regarding the first question about the navigation, yes, basically your placement advisor will submit your application on your behalf. A lot of universities in the US, because they have a history of working with the IE, they accept your Fulbright application as their application. Now, sometimes you will be required to submit something additional, maybe to answer a specific question, to write an essay, to do an interview, and your placement advisor will be keeping an eye on all of that, and they will be telling you when the deadline is, what you need to submit. They will also chase you and remind you, so they will be managing that kind of on your behalf and making sure that you meet all the deadlines and submit everything you need to submit. And also, as I've said during the webinar, the presentation, all application fees are included in the service, so you do not need to pay for any of that.
Is it possible to work part-time in the US? Sorry, it's just slipped away from me there. To support yourself if you were to be given an award.
In terms of, so kind of, I would say there are a few answers to this question. So the first one, legally, yes, you can work. Now, unfortunately, I can't confirm exactly how many hours and what the arrangement is, but most of our grantees do get some sort of work experience. Now, this work experience does have to be related to your academic work. So, for instance, if you were interested in doing an assistantship, or working in a lab, that's normally fine. If you're looking just for like a random part-time job, like in a coffee shop to support yourself, that's fairly unlikely to happen. Another thing which we always kind of tell our grantees is that while it's fine legally to work, we probably wouldn't advise you to expect to get a job and to rely on that financially, because what many grantees find when they go to the US is that it is very intense. There will be a lot of academic work, there will be a lot of events, there will be a lot of things you will want to do, and you may not necessarily be able to sort of do all of that in addition to working part-time.
For our next question, I believe we've answered some of it, but I think there's an extra bit, so I'm going to ask it again.
Yep.
What is the competition ratio, and how does this differ for different career stages, i.e. recent graduate, PhD student, or mid-career?
Yeah, so regarding the first one, so we do not disclose those numbers because, generally speaking, that's not very helpful, and it very much depends on the award type. In terms of how we assess applications, so the commission staff are obviously involved in the assessment process, but we have a whole sort of reading panel selection process. Each application is normally reviewed by three sort of experts in the field, and one of the first sort of piece of advice we give them, one of the first guidelines, is the fact that they have to take into account sort of your academic stage. So simply because somebody has had more work experience or a longer publication list, if this is at all relevant, or more voluntary positions or whatever, that in itself doesn't really give anyone any advantage. So we do take into account sort of where you are in life. One thing here to kind of point out is that some of our awards do have requirements in terms of work experience. So at the moment, I'm talking about the Sir Cyril Taylor Award. So that award specifically requires candidates to have had sort of relevant work experience. And in this case, obviously, if you're a recent graduate or if you're in your final second year, that's unfortunately will be, you may not be eligible, or your application may be considered relatively weak. But if that's the case, we make it clear on the award page, and I think that's probably the only award I can think of.
Can Fulbright provide advice about visas or student accommodation, or student accommodation?
So student accommodation, no, unfortunately, we do not provide any kind of guidance and advice. Visas, yes, so that's actually a very good point. So all Fulbright grantees go to the US on the J1 visa. This is a government-sponsored visa. This is a requirement. This is a global Fulbright policy. It's not flexible. If you're not willing to go to the US on the J1, unfortunately, you cannot take up the award. And all visa paperwork is processed through the Fulbright Commission. So again, that's one of the benefits you get with the award. So you will have your program manager work with you, will most likely be. I will be working with you to help you navigate the whole visa process. And again, that's free of charge.
Do you have any advice for choosing which schools to apply to when visiting them isn't really an option financially? Thank you for the presentation.
So in terms, I personally, no, not really. Well, partly because there are over 4,000 universities in the US. First of all, I do recommend talking to Education USA Advising Team. They have much more information. They also run kind of more general webinars on postgraduate studies, so do go and talk to them. They may not necessarily be able to advise, kind of to recommend specific institutions, but they should be able to definitely kind of help you a little bit with sort of narrowing your options down. Another alternative, if you're feeling a little bit lost and kind of like not sure where to start or what to do, is to go for the IE placements, because you don't really need to know where you want to go, because if you're successful, your placement advisor will be working with you on that.
How important are your academic grades, A-level results and undergraduate marks when deciding on what applications are successful?
So we don't really look at A levels. So I would say grade-wise, it's probably more important in terms of determining your eligibility. So we expect all our candidates to have achieved or to be expected to achieve a 2-1 overall. If you have a 2-2 or expected to achieve a 2-2, there is a form we ask our candidates to complete to explain their circumstances. Now, obviously, if we're looking at somebody with like a 2-2 and comparing them against somebody with a first, there is an academic difference. But I would say we look at applications holistically, and simply because somebody has a 71 overall while somebody else has a 69.5 doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to give a preference to the former. So it really depends on the quality of your application, and in most cases, to a very large extent, your grades will determine your eligibility. Now, one thing which we are likely to pay attention to is, for instance, if you started with, let's say, thirds in your first year, and then you progress to, let's say, a strong 2-1 towards the end of your third year, fourth year at university, this is when we're going to think, oh, actually, okay, so within such a short period of time, this person has really improved. Also, something might have happened in your life. And, we encourage people to be kind of honest and open in their personal statement, in their supplemental form. And, you might have started with a first, you then have a drop of grades, and then we can see that those grades are recovering. Then if you explain in your, in your application that something happened during that period of time, again, we're going to sort of have a very understanding approach in most cases. So these are the things we may be thinking about. But really, I can't think of a situation where I was literally going like, oh, this person has a 69 and this person has a 70. I'm going, to give the award, or an interview slot to the person who has a 70. It doesn't really work that way.
On the application, there is the option to add standardized tests such as GRE and the GMAT, etc. Is it recommended that we complete these if we haven't done already?
So the Fulbright Commission is not going to take those into account. Now, that's actually also a really good question. Most universities in the US will require that information, or that information may make your application stronger. If you choose the IE placement option, you're very likely to be asked to sit one of those tests. And again, we will cover that cost. So I would say if you haven't done it, and especially if you're going for the IE placement option, don't worry about it, because we're not going to look at those results, and you will have an opportunity to sit the test for free.
How long do you have to use the funding?
So that we can it depends on your financial needs. You don't have to use all the money in your first year. So most master's programs in the US are at least 2 years long. So if you want to have your award split over 2 years, that's fine. Again, if you're doing a PhD and you want to have that split over 5 years, that's fine. So it's entirely up to you.
Would acceptance rates differ depending on which institutions you choose or which discipline?
I assume acceptance to Fulbright. No.
For all disciplines, sorry, the award.
Right, okay, thank you. No, I mean, when I say no, I mean, we want to know, in terms of academic disciplines, no, it doesn't matter. So we don't have a preference for a particular academic field or particular sort of postgraduate study type. When it comes to institutions, again, in principle, no. But the expectation or the requirement is that you have a very strong reason, or a number of very strong reasons to be there. And I think one issue we face every year is we receive some very strong applications from the candidates who want to go to Ivy League institutions only, and they're not able to provide particularly strong reasons why they want to go to those institutions. Very often, the conversation goes about, the fact that everyone knows those universities and they're prestigious, and the faculty are great, and they've read a lot about that institution online. And all of that is great, all of that is relevant, all of that is correct. But when it's hundreds of applications saying exactly the same thing, this is really not, it kind of it really makes your application sort of somewhat weaker in a way. Well, those candidates who identify, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 institutions, and they really know why they're going there. Very often those are not Ivy League institutions. Those tend to be very strong.
What support does Fulbright give to scholars once they start their degree in the US?
Well, it kind of depends on sort of what support you expect, in the sense that you will obviously have your program manager in the UK. You have your so everyone, regardless of the placement type you select, will have an advisor or a point of contact at the IE during their studies. So if you need any help with visas, immigration, paperwork to get a job, all of that will be done through the IE, and they're there to support you. They also organize various events. So again, if you're looking for sort of, social life, for things to happen, that's a resource. We also provide a limited health insurance policy. Now, not all universities accept it, but ultimately we do provide it, and everyone gets enrolled in that. So that's basically the support. And then obviously, if something happens, we very much encourage you to notify your IE advisor and us as well. And then depending on the circumstances, we are sometimes able to provide support.
I have a 3-year PhD scholarship at a UK university and would like to spend a year in the US doing research and not a taught master's or PhD. Can placement advisors help find a suitable institution to do this, or do I have to arrange this myself?
They can. So you can apply for the IE placement option if you would like to do so.
Does this period of research have to lead to a recognised research degree, or is it possible to undertake a standalone research project that is not intended to count towards a degree?
We do have grantees, not many, who go and do an independent research placement. Now, when I say independent, I mean not a part of any postgraduate qualifications, such as master's or PhD, or even the postgraduate diploma. It does have to happen in affiliation with a university in the US. So you have to have a supervisor. You have to they have to confirm that it's full-time, that it's in person, that you require access to a lab or library or whatever, and regular supervision sessions are going to happen, and all of that. But it can be an independent research project for placement.
How can I contact the placement advisor?
You cannot contact them. You can apply to the Fulbright Commission, and then if you are successful, you will be paired with a placement advisor depending on your academic discipline.
Do you have any advice for applicants who haven't been to university, written academic papers in a while? Is there any support Fulbright offers in this regard?
When you haven't been to university, so the awards, just to kind of reiterate, are for those of you who want to go to the US to study for a postgraduate qualification. So the expectation is that you have or studying towards a bachelor's degree. We are a very small team, so we do not provide advice, kind of one-to-one advice on things like writing your personal statement or study objective. Again, my advice would be to Google things, also to go to your advisor on campus if you're still at university. If you've been out of education for a while, I would probably suggest online research because, as I said, unfortunately, we do not provide that service.
I have looked through many of the UK postgraduate alumni on the Fulbright website. It seems many of the successful candidates have taken at least 1 year out between graduating and applying for postgraduate study. Is this vital, or could I apply this year? I am in my 3rd year, completing my BSc in architecture and hope to graduate this summer.
That is actually very, very much the case in terms of a lot of our alumni are a little bit older than the grantees we're actually selecting now, and partly this is because of the IE placement. So, for instance, last year when we did our recruitment, a lot of people who were applying were still in their 2nd year at university. So again, as I've said, it doesn't really matter where you are in terms of your academic journey, as long as the award you're applying for doesn't require work experience.
Is the IIE pathway more or less competitive than the independent pathway, or is it equal?
again, we've run it once, and to be honest, they're equal. Again, it does. So when it comes to the All Disciplines Award, we assess, not assess, but basically those of you who will apply for the IE option will compete only against other people who have applied for the IE placement, and those who apply independently compete against those who apply independently. So those are kind of two different, not different, but two separate candidate pools. When it comes for partner awards, so for example, those of you maybe who are thinking to apply for the BAFTA scholarship or the Alistair Cook Award, so these awards can be secured on either placement type. So in this case, it doesn't really matter what placement option you choose, so everyone will be competing against everyone else who has applied for that award. But generally speaking, when it comes to the all disciplines, again, from my very limited experience, they're pretty much the same.
Given that the Fulbright Scholarship will not permit scholars to do paid employment and internships, can scholars still intern during the summers? Can I volunteer? What if the course I've selected has integrated internships? Am I wrong?
That's right. So I'm going to clarify at that point. We do permit our grantees to work and to do paid internships and to do paid work. It's just that it has to be authorized by the IE when you're already in the US. You will have to submit an official request explaining what you will be doing, what sort of position you have secured, and then they have to authorize that. And I believe there is a certain number of hours you can work, which unfortunately I don't know. And you can get paid for that. So all of that is perfectly fine. And also you can do voluntary work if you would like to do so. So both are possible, but there are certain limitations which normally the IE clarify when you're already in the US.
So I think we've answered a similar question, but there's a new sort of angle on it. How many grantees come from a WP disadvantaged background? Big question, but historically.
Unfortunately, we do not sort of run statistics. We obviously want to attract applicants from all backgrounds, but we do not offer awards based on somebody's sort of socioeconomic background. So unfortunately, I just can't answer this question. And also, I just want to add that it does depend on, different institutions interpret that term differently, and in different institutions you have different underrepresented groups. So.
What are the IIE placement model partner institutions?
They don't have partner institutions as such. I know that they work with something like 200 or 300 US universities, and they just have a kind of a historical relationship with them, but it's not a partnership as such. So they don't work necessarily with every single university in the US, but we're talking about hundreds of institutions.
If your course costs less than $45,000, could some of the award be used for living costs?
So just to clarify here, so the award can go towards your tuition or living costs or anything related to your studies. So it's not just about your tuition. It's fairly unlikely for all of that to be under 45,000, although it does happen actually. If it does happen, we're going to adjust your award. We're going to reduce something from it to avoid finding duplication. But as you can totally use that towards your living expenses.
Do many people get additional scholarships on top of the Fulbright? Are applicants expected to apply to more scholarships?
So, first of all, I would definitely encourage people to apply for anything they can apply for. I would say a lot of our grantees get additional scholarships. Those of them who apply for the IE placement, again, we are at the moment waiting for decisions to come back, but everything I've seen so far, I'm pretty sure everything does include financial support, more or less, depending on the institution. Again, as I've said, it's fairly unlikely that 45, again, depends on the award. Some of our awards are fully funded, so you don't really need to kind of worry about sort of other funding. If we're talking about the 45K, it's fairly unlikely that it will be a fully funded award, again, unless your institution gives you some sort of financial package or reduces your fees or offers you something else.
How many words should references be? What is sent to referees by Fulbright, sort of information wise, once they're put down as a referee?
So it's an application, not application. It's basically a reference form where they will be, well, they are asked to provide a reference, and that goes directly to them. So the candidate is not involved in that process. You will be able to see, however, when your referees submit their reference. You will not be able to see the reference, but you can see on the portal when the reference has been submitted. So it's a fairly standard reference request. There is nothing particularly kind of unusual there. And I will be talking about this in one of my sort of future seminars about sort of the kind of the content. But basically, our advice is to, well, explain to your referees what you're actually doing in terms of what you're applying for. Maybe share the like the Fulbright website link. And also, very importantly, we very much encourage you to share your study objective with them as well, if they're not your kind of direct academic advisor or supervisor.
Does the university you go to matter? I.e., is there any advantages or disadvantages to going to a Russell Group university or a non-Russell Group university?
No, not really. We do not kind of give any extra points to anyone, depending on the institution they go to.
I believe something similar has been answered, but it's a sort of new angle. Is the accommodation cost included as well as the university fees with a Fulbright award?
No. So some of our awards do include a stipend, and that's mostly the awards offered in partnership with US universities. And obviously you can use that stipend to cover your accommodation costs, but there is no package which would include accommodation straight away.
Should you already have been accepted for a course or courses before applying for an award, or vice versa?
No. So again, it depends on sort of where you are on your academic journey and whether you actually have secured a place somewhere. If you have, you can then apply, you can defer and apply for the independent placement model. If you are, again, in your second year at university and you're considering applying for the IE placement, then obviously you're not required to secure a place anywhere.
Should we say in our study objective, sorry, it's just slipped away from me. That's the only downside to this. Should we say in our study objective if we plan to intern alongside our masters, especially if interning opportunities has dictated the choice of master's course and university location?
You can, that's fine. You know, we're not going to sort of penalize you in any way for that. That's, you know, problem. In certain cases it may make sense to, you know, it may, for instance, it may demonstrate your interest in that particular location. So if you would like to talk about your internship from that perspective, that's perfectly fine. It does depend on what you say, what you end up saying in your personal statement or your study objective. So in principle, it doesn't penalize you in any way, but it also may not necessarily add any value to your application. So it really depends on the context.
How much, if anything, does it cost to make a Fulbright application itself?
It's free. We do not charge for that.
So there's been a clarification. There was a previous question about contacting advisors. So it's actually the USA education advisors. How could we contact them?
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for clarifying. So if you go to the Fulbright website, at the bottom of the page, there is a contact us option. If you click on that and then scroll to the very bottom of the page, you will be able to see a calendar, and you select the date you want, and you will see if you can book a video appointment. So you can do that on our website.
If the master's course is 2 years, will Fulbright cover all the years or only one?
Well, again, it's kind of neither, depending on your award. So if we're talking about a fully funded award at Brown, for instance, that covers all years of tuition. Now, if we're talking about an award which is 45K, 60K, that's the amount you get. So it's up to you how you split that money. You can do 22.5 and 22.5, or you can do 45K in 1 year. So it's entirely up to you. But we do not renew funding every year. So that's a very important point for you to keep in mind. So the award is what you get. You get it once and that's it.
I believe this has been answered, but once again, a slightly different angle. If I am a PhD student, can I apply to have a year placement in the US during my PhD?
Yes, you can, as long as it's at least 4 months long.
Would I be right in thinking you said that it was harder to get an interview through the independent stream? Could you explain in more detail why this is, please?
What I said, it's not that it's hard. I mean, it does depend ultimately on the number of awards and the number of applications. In principle, this is what determines kind of how competitive the process is. What I said is that it may be so the one of the key requirements of applying for the independent placement model is having some really good reasons for the institutions you want to go to. So first of all, identifying the institutions you want to go to and having some really good reasons for those programs. And this is where, we get a lot of strong applications in terms of people's academic records and maybe their extracurricular activities, and, things they've done, generally speaking, their academic plans and so on and so forth. And then they completely fail to tell us why they want to go to the university they want to go to. Very often they don't even mention them in their application for whatever reason. This is why I keep telling everyone that you really need to read the instructions. So, and this is one of the kind of key reasons why a lot of those applications do not get progressed to the interview level. This is what I meant. I hope I've clarified my point, but if you need more information, just let us know.
How easy is it to bring family with you if you're successful?
So I would say the main thing about family members is that you're responsible for them financially. So if that's not a problem, we help with visa paperwork. So they will be going on the J2 visa. We help with appointments, we help with processing that, so we provide that support and all of that is free of charge. But again, just to reiterate, we do not take any financial responsibility for them, so you will be expected to demonstrate that you have enough funds to sort of sponsor their time in the US.
Do my references need to be completed by the application deadline, or is there a sort of another extended deadline on top of that for them?
No, that's also actually a very good question. The deadline is the same for everything. So it has to be your full package, which comes into us by 5 p.m. on the deadline.
I'm not sure if this can be answered, but it might be worth bringing up. What proportion of applicants make it to the interview stage?
Again, unfortunately I can't answer this question because it very much depends on the what we're talking about, and also it does vary sort of year by year.
What is the test for admissions?
Admissions. So maybe somebody could clarify that. In terms of, there are no tests when you're applying for Fulbright. So the selection process is you submit an application, you're then invited to an interview, and that's pretty much it. And then we decide who the awards go to. In terms of admission tests to US universities, there are different tests, and it does depend on your academic discipline. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to kind of provide additional information on that. Again, I would say have a look at universities in the US, the specific programs you may be interested in. Talk to Education USA. They definitely have much more information about admission tests.
What happens after you apply? So this is a question about the timeline. When are interviews held, and when does Fulbright normally get back to applicants?
Okay, so as I've said, the deadline is on the 2nd of May. Interviews will be held in early August. So at some point before the end of July, those of you who are successful or who would like to interview will get a notification. We will notify everyone, regardless of your application status. You will know the outcome of your application. So the interviews are in early August. We then contact everyone, I would say, somewhere between the end of August and mid-September. Again, everyone who goes to the interview will get a notification regardless of the interview stage. And then, so we make decisions sort of early September. And then those of you who select the IE placement option will be paired with placement advisors, I would say at some point in October. Like towards the end of October, end of September, early October, this is when the process starts, and this is when you start working with your placement advisor.
Quite a broad question, but it might be worth highlighting. What are the main things you are looking for?
I'm not going to go into detail because we will be running a webinar on that. I'm going to reiterate the point that we assess applications holistically, and we do look for much more than just an academic record. I do very much encourage you to have a look at our instructions, our website. We do provide guidance to applicants. We do tell you what we expect you to write about in your personal statement and your study objective.
I currently have a master's. Can I apply for a PhD or a second master's?
Yes, you can apply for either. Now, if you do go for another master's, again, we will want to know why you feel that the master's you already have is not sufficient. So this is just something to add in your study objective of a personal statement.
Just got to find where we are. That's all right. Can you recommend how much time should be scheduled to complete an application for award?
Unfortunately, not. It really depends on your working style, your writing style. I do always say, start as early as you can, simply to get an idea of what you're actually expected to do to submit your application, because you will need to collect some paperwork, let's say your transcripts, your references, or at least you will need to talk to your referees about it. In terms of like how long it takes to complete the application, I have absolutely no clue. But this is a very good question to ask to Fulbright Ambassador on our website, so I very much recommend doing that.
Do you have to specify whether you want to pursue a master's or a PhD? Is this something that an advisor would be able to help with, or do I have to decide before applying?
You can definitely talk to an advisor, I assume Education USA advisor, and see what they say. But yes, we will need to know what you're applying for, because in a sense that will determine our expectations in terms of the academic level.
Do references have to be academic, or can they be from employers?
So I would say we would like to see at least one academic reference. In principle, they can come from your employers, from your advisors, but what we want to read in those references is why your referees think that you are suitable for a Fulbright, for the Fulbright program, and why your study objective is fantastic and great, and why it should be pursued. And normally, it's your academics who are in a position to do so.
Could you explain a little bit more about the Opportunity Fund, please?
Yeah, so the Opportunity Fund, hold on a second. Right, Opportunity Fund. So that's basically an additional source of funding offered by the Fulbright Commission to grantees. So as an applicant, you do not apply for that, you do not have access to that. If you are successful, if you are selected for a Fulbright Award, after you go through the university application process, if you realize that you are still struggling to afford study in the US, you've considered a variety of institutions, you're not just thinking about Ivy League universities, you've reached out to universities and maybe other foundations trying to collect funding, and you're still struggling, this is when you can apply to the Opportunity Fund. But this is something, again, as an applicant, you will not be able to apply for.
So there's a couple of more questions about the timeline, but I believe this has been answered quite recently. So just a slightly new angle. If you get to the interview stage, will the interview be via Zoom or in person?
We haven't decided on that. We did Zoom interviews last year. So to be honest, I suspect it will be Zoom, but it may change.
And another angle on course costs. If your course costs more than the award and you were able to fundraise the remainder, when would this have to be paid by?
So in terms of, so you will have to demonstrate that you have the money required to afford the course. I would say 2-3 months before you start the program. So this is when we do financial verification. So that money, if it's an award, for instance, you secured an additional award elsewhere, it has to be just, or sort of a letter from that institution will suffice. If, let's say, I don't know, you found a guarantor, there is a process of that, or maybe your parents say, you can have this amount of money. It really depends on your circumstances. But normally we do financial verification 2-3 months before the grant start date. In terms of paying your tuition, that very much depends on your institution. So most institutions have a payment plan, payment schedule, and you pay per term or per half a year. So it does depend on the university.
If the interviews are chosen to be in person, will you cover expenses?
We do not cover expenses, I'm afraid. I'm going to stop sharing this. Oh, here we go. No, that's fine. Okay, I just couldn't see the time. Yes, we still have a few minutes.
And so, oh, just one more there. If successful, when do you receive the award? What's the time frame for that?
So you will receive a kind of a selection notification in early September, and you will be asked to kind of confirm whether you would like to accept the award. We then do need to submit a report to the board in Washington, D.C. And when they come back to us and officially confirm our selections, this is when you officially become a Fulbright grantee. And that normally happens. So this year, I think we had an event in early December, and I remember announcing that everyone had been confirmed. So this is basically the timeline.
So to follow on from the expenses question, if it is in person and you do not cover these costs, how can those from a lower socio-economic background fairly participate?
When we do that in person, we travel. So we do not expect people to come to London.
Okay, I have reached the bottom of the current questions. So if anybody does have any remaining questions, please put them in now.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to give you a few moments to submit any questions you may have. If not, just a reminder that there will be more more interviews, yes, more webinars. And I appreciate the fact that to some of the questions today I've provided relatively broad answers, because we will be running events which will focus specifically on those things. For instance, what to write in your application. So do keep an eye on our events page. I will probably be running an event in early March, and I will be talking about the IE placements and the independent placements, and then there will be an event about submitting an application. So that's basically our plan for the next 2 months. Harvey, have we got anything else coming in?
Yes, we've got a few more. I will try and answer as many. Here we are. So how is the interview structured? What are you looking for from the interview process?
I'm not going to take any questions about the interview, because we do run a webinar for selected grantees. Sorry, not grantees, selected candidates for the interview.
And I can answer in text there. So is the award for 1 year only or for all years studying? If my course is more than 1 year, do I need to apply every year?
So funding is available only once. So you get your award and you decide how you would like to split that. I think I've talked about this before. So if it's 45k, you get it once. You cannot reapply for Fulbright to cover your second, third, fourth years of expenses. So it's just one amount of money that you get, unless it is a fully funded award. For instance, the award we offer with the University of Florida. And I will take 1 or maybe 2 more questions if we have any questions.
Okay, I will have a look. So just a little bit of clarification on what was happening in London. Sorry, they just missed the information about if it was in person. Sorry.
Right, so I think the interviews, so we interview in London, but we also travel around the UK. So before the pandemic, we went to a number of places, and we held interview in person. But again, one of the reasons why, for instance, we did interviews on Zoom last year, and that was sort of my suggestion, which everyone was very happy with, was the fact that we appreciate the fact that even if you have to take a half an hour train somewhere, it's still an expense. And this is why I have a feeling we will continue interviewing on Zoom.
Thank you for that. We've got 2 more questions. So could you elaborate on the sort of independent research program that wouldn't be attached to a master's or a PhD?
Well, I can't really elaborate now, but I can just say a few words. So some of our grantees they find a supervisor based at a US university. That supervisor they normally specialize in something. They're running some sort of a research project, and the the candidate reaches out to them and basically arranges to be involved in that project as a research assistant or in some sort of a capacity. And this is when it can be, and we can consider an independent research placement.
And they apologise for missing the opening, so it may have been answered. But when applying through the IIE placement, will I be steered towards those 300 universities? And do those universities include Ivy, Stanford, University of Chicago, etc.?
So you basically your placement advisor will have a conversation with you, and depending on your academic preferences, they will come up with a selection of institutions, and then you will pick 4 from that list. They do include Ivy League institutions. I'm working with IE Place branches now, and I'm pretty sure at least half of them have at least one Ivy League institution. Now, if you work with the IE, it does not necessarily guarantee that you will be able to secure more generous funding than working without the IE, because historically it's been quite difficult to secure funding from those institutions. So I'm just saying so that you are aware. But yes, Ivy League institutions are included. If you have specific reasons to be there, I very much encourage my grantees to kind of communicate those preferences to their placement advisors. But if you're considering Ivy League institutions only, then we recommend the independent placement model. So on this note, I think we're going to end the event tonight. It's 6 o'clock. So once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A copy of this webinar will be made available on our website and on YouTube, so you will be able to watch that. I hope you will be able to join us for our future events, and Harvey, thank you very much for helping me tonight.